Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. Chris and Pat are joining me today. Christopher, how are you getting on, my friend?
Wonderful, thank you, mate. Wearing my brand new Kickers jumper. You can't see it because we're on G Messenger. G Messenger, what's it called?
G Messenger. 50-year-old Hamill's turned up. Karen Hamill.
Dougie Critchley has commandeered my mind. But apart from that, I'm absolutely cosmic. I mean, Celtic did draw again last night, but I'm not letting it get me down anymore. You know, let's just start the rebuild now. How in?
And Pato, how are you, my friend? All good?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Like, nothing really to report. The sun's shining. Lockdown is still terrible, but overall, I'm not in a bad mood, man. I'm ready for January to be over.
Oh, 100%. The worst month of the year, January. Not a single good thing about it, other than Man United being top of the Premier League table. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about which talents are being wasted around Europe and clubs that would be perfect for them. That was a question submitted by It's a Bit Tweeting. Now, in general, because of COVID, clubs are kind of making do with what they've got a little bit more. Expenditure across all of the major leagues has dropped fairly dramatically, but I guess this question's probably sprung off the back of the Martin Odegaard situation, right, Chris? Because he has hit the headlines pretty big time in the UK anyway.
Yeah, I think he's captivated football Twitter's imagination, hasn't he? Particularly with Arsenal coming in with an 11th hour bid. And I say 11th hour because it seemed like a dead cert he was going to go to Sevilla on loan. And then Sociedad came back in with a loan and potentially an obligation or option to buy him at the end of the season. And that is believed to be his preference. But this was before Arsenal came in. So by the time this goes out, his future might have been decided. But it's still quite interesting to discuss his long-term future, you know, the summer and beyond. And we've got plenty of other targets as well to touch upon, haven't we? But let's stick with Odegaard for now, because I'd be surprised if the Norwegian was sold in this window, Joseph, because his contract runs until 2023. And, you know, letting him go on a permanent feels like an odd thing for Real Madrid to do when they can get top dollar for him, you know, in the next two windows. And if he performs well at Sociedad again, it might run his value back up, because no doubt it has dipped a little bit because he's only started 3 games for Real Madrid this season. Under 300
He has had injuries, don't he?
In the league. He has, but he's also not been involved in the last 10 matchday squads. I think the last time he featured was against Shakhtar Donetsk in the Champions League in December. And for a player of his calibre, that's pretty poor. Again, I'd be surprised if he joined Sociedad on a permanent. Its market value at the minute is around 36 million. Their highest ever transfer, around 13 mil. Do they have the financial firepower to bring him in on a permanent basis? Maybe they'd go balls to the walls. I don't know about the financial situation at the Anoeta. Is that the name of the stadium? If memory serves me correctly. But yeah, Marca are saying that he no longer wants to continue at Real Madrid under Zidane, which is a markedly different stance from before, right? Because it was I'm going to go out on loan to Herenveen, to Vitesse, to Sociedad, and prove to Real Madrid and Zinedine Zidane that I am of La Liga quality, I'm of Real Madrid quality, and he did that. Like, he crushed it at Herenveen. Well, not particularly crushed it at Herenveen. He made steady progress at Herenveen, then crushed it at Vitesse. I think it was 21 goal involvements in 33 Eredivisie starts. And then again made that step up, graduated to La Liga football with Sociedad. I think he put up the 4th most goal involvements in the squad last campaign, and there's some really impressive stats in there. We might touch upon them later in terms of passes into the final third, key passes per 90, because I mean, he and Willian Jose were running that attack last campaign. But what I thought we might be able to debate before we jump into the numbers, and maybe Pat has a view on this, because I remember a year ago as talking about how Real Madrid squad building process on Sunday Vibes was better than Barcelona's, and they'd future-proofed their squad a little bit more. But now, under Zidane, you know, they've chosen to get rid of Diaz. Kubo's gone out on loan. Hakimi went on a permanent. Reguilon. Oscar Rodriguez this season. Teo Hernandez last season, who's only 23, by the way. Does not look 23. That boy's got Spartan blood. Mayoral, who probably wouldn't have made the grade anyway, and Jovic was actually under 23, and you could probably throw Kovacic and Ceballos onto that pile as well. So it seemed like Real Madrid, before we go back to players that have been underutilised, I'd be interested to get your opinion on this, guys. It seems like Real Madrid had the squad to maybe transition from the old guard, but they've chose to cash in on it instead. They've got fair fees for a lot of those players, but now they're very reliant on 31-year-old Toni Kroos, 35-year-old Luka Modric again. So I suppose as a subtopic, are Real Madrid failing their youth? And then it'd be good to get Pat's opinion on Odegaard at Arsenal as well.
Go on, Pat, you jump in.
Well, I don't know if they're failing their youth. I mean, some of them they are. Like Odegaard, I think, is an example of somebody who should have been playing a lot more this season. And I do think that when it's come to turning over the midfield, Zinedine Zidane has been far too conservative. And it's not like he's getting the results to justify it at the moment either. I would like to see more from the Brazilian kids, though obviously Rodrigo has been out injured lately. But, you know, with players like Hakimi and Theo Hernandez, I think Real Madrid were treated them perfectly fairly. They said, look, we're not going to play you, so we're going to sell you. And those guys have both got very good moves and are doing perfectly well. Now, I think maybe not Theo Hernandez, but certainly Hakimi should have been Real Madrid's starting right back. That seems fairly obvious, I think, to pretty much everyone. But at least they didn't keep him there and make him rot on the bench. And I think the same goes for Ceballos to some degree. Kovacic and Mariano Diaz, are obviously quite a bit older than that particular group of players. And the fact that they were allowed to kind of leave, and then they didn't have, like Mariano Diaz didn't have to go back when Real Madrid tried to exercise their buyback.
Ruben Diaz, I meant. I forgot Mariano's second name was Diaz. Yeah, the confusion was my bad there. But he's gone out on loan to AC Milan, right? Not Ruben Diaz. Brahim Diaz.
Oh, Brahim
so
Diaz.
Many Diazes.
Brahim Diaz. Yeah, Brahim Diaz is a difficult one. Again, I kind of feel like I don't really mind it so much. He's extremely young. I don't think when he went to Real Madrid, he thought he was going to be a guaranteed starter. Or if he did, I think that he was deluding himself. So I don't know. There are a limited number of players, I think, to whom this applies. One who we're going to talk about in a little bit. I think a broader issue has just been not so much failing their youth, but a conservatism in lineup. I don't think that has to be about giving young players minutes so much as it has to be trusting the squad as a whole. We've seen Kroos, Casemiro, Modric be consistent starters at that club now for 6-7 years. Mm-hmm. And that to me is just not a smart way to run your club. They're gonna drop off at some point, and even if it's very small, we look at Modric and we say, wow, Modric is still a great player for somebody in his mid-30s. But even if that drop-off is small, it's still a drop-off. Your team is still getting worse year on year. And I think over the last 3 or 4 seasons, I think Real Madrid have spent something like 400 million euros. And of the money they've spent, I think really only Courtois and Ferland Mendy have become nailed-on starters. That's a bit troubling to me. But I don't know, failing their youth, I guess, I'm not sure I can get on board with that phrase, because I think that players can agitate for moves. Players can demand to go, but they're always saying, "Oh, I want to go back to Real Madrid. I want to make it at Real Madrid." Dani Ceballos is saying it now. I want to go back to Real Madrid. I want to make my name at Real Madrid. Well, if he feels that way, then you've got to face the fact you might end up sitting on the bench for a couple of years.
Yeah, I agree with that, particularly about Dani Ceballos. Look at it. When I watch Dani Ceballos for Arsenal, I don't see a player that's immediately ready to oust Luka Modric and Toni Kroos from the midfield roles at Real Madrid for at least 15 games a season. And I was looking at, obviously we're shooting this on a Thursday, and I was looking at the game, it was last night, against the third tier team before we started shooting this. And the lineup is still packed full of the old guard, even though they lost at the round of 32 to a third tier team. It's still jam-packed full of the old guard. There's still Marcelo in there. There's still even though he's not technically part of the older generation, Luka Vazquez still in there. Straight off the bench when they went behind and were losing, you see Benzema come on, you see Kroos come on. It's I think it's less of an issue for letting the youth down, and I think maybe it's more of an issue of Zidane's management not being able to balance immediate success versus squad turnover. It is one of the hardest jobs in management, isn't it? To be able to turn a squad over year on year on year, and he's had massive success with that squad. And other than maybe Sir Alex Ferguson, who did it for literally decades, I can't think of that many managers that have done it that successfully, where they've gone and successfully transitioned from one squad to another one and maintained success.
Yeah, but Ferguson did it in a really hard way, and Ferguson was remarkable at doing that. Ferguson would turn over a lot of the squad, like basically in the space of a year. Zidane didn't have to do that. Zidane could have turned over this squad like piece by piece over the last 4 or 5 years. He could have, and I do think that like
Agreed.
I kind of agree with you about Ceballos, though. Actually, I think one of Ceballos' problems is not really playing in his best position. I felt when he played as just kind of like a 6 at the end of last season, that was the best we saw him at Arsenal. But do you think that in a team rammed full of superstars, he isn't good enough to play against like the bottom third of the table? I think Real Madrid should win those games with Dani Ceballos in the lineup. And
yeah, I agree.
I don't know.
But
like
equally, against the third-tier team, he's putting out Casemiro and Valverde as a midfield too. And it's like, if there's not enough rotation to drop either of those two, then what hope Ceballos got?
Yeah, no, I agree. But I think, well, firstly, I think that last night was a bit of a freak result. Like, I think they'd probably win that game 9 times out of 10, and they lost it this time, and that's embarrassing. But like, I don't think that it's necessarily a sign of everything going wrong. Like, I think they conceded like 5 shots and had about 26 or something. Like, it was crazy. But yeah, I mean, I just think that if he'd kept hold of Kovacic could have come into this lineup like 4 years ago. And then by this point, we wouldn't be talking about turning over half the midfield. We'd be saying, well, you know what? They've got like a combination of Casemiro, Modric, Kroos, Kovacic, maybe Ceballos in rotation, maybe Odegaard in rotation. And then you'd say, oh, well, actually, you know, these guys have been playing together for quite some time, and it's not like rejigging the whole thing on the
Sir Alex Ferguson was doing it while cutting costs as well, right? Remember the summer they sold Cristiano and the summer after they sold Cristiano Ronaldo?
Yeah.
In came Obertan, Owen, Antonio Valencia. Like, they had to sell Ronaldo because they were posting such big losses, and that is why there's so much sort of anger between the United fans and the Glazers, right? Because they don't operate like sugar daddies. They are literally, you know, making money on this Manchester United operation. So I think it's a different situation entirely, like Pat was getting at, because Zidane actually, there wasn't that many moving pieces. Like, they had a gluttony of young talent already at the club. Like, they were stockpiling talent like probably only Chelsea have in the modern era. And like I said, they've got good resale value, and they've tended to get great fees, but maybe at the cost of longer term success. I don't think Real Madrid are the second best team in Spain right now, despite being there in the league table. I think, you know, Sevilla are probably a more complete side. Villarreal are statistically playing better football, and that's a long way to fall in such a short space of time, no matter how good they were under Zidane in that first spell.
Yeah, but I just think, I don't know, maybe it's just my mindset when it comes to Madrid. I could never imagine Real Madrid, and this is, I'm not saying this is right, I can never imagine Real Madrid going through a season where they blood youngsters and it's like a young transitional team. Like, I can't think of a Real Madrid that's ever done that, and I just can't imagine it happening. Like, I can imagine this summer them clearing out more youngsters in order to make way for Pogba,
but that's what they were supposed to be doing
David
this summer.
Alaba.
Do you remember at the start of the summer we did that video, why Real Madrid aren't signing Galacticos anymore? Like, what is their transfer policy then? Because they cleared
I think it was not just to save up for Mbappe, Pogba and Alaba.
Yeah, but I think there are lots of things that are not necessarily thinkable. So, for instance, like in the season that Cristiano Ronaldo left, like, it was unthinkable that they would let Ronaldo go and wouldn't replace him with a superstar, but they did it. And that should have been their transitional season. Like, that was a year when Reguilon got loads of minutes. That was a year when I think Vinicius came in. Like, there were people getting minutes, like rotational minutes that season. And it kind of looked like, okay, even though they got rid of Lopetegui, even though they got rid of Solari, like, it felt like they were going to reap the benefits of those younger players getting those minutes. But I think that I actually agree with you that, like, or let me put it this way. I think a big issue is what clubs think is acceptable for that club. Like, I think that, you know, we talk about this with Man United, where we say Man United should sign this sort of player, and you say, but they won't, because that guy's not a Man United player. And that annoys me, because I'm like, that's a stupid way to look at players. But I do think that is how clubs look at it. I think you're absolutely correct that, like, this is how they think of it. And I think Real Madrid are the same. They're like, well, we can't accept, you know, maybe coming fourth this season because we're blooding all our youngsters, even if the benefit of that is that in 3 years' time, we've got a title-winning young side. Like, they just can't bring themselves to do it. Instead, they're always going to look for a quick fix. And in this case, they might get lucky, and it might just be they get Mbappe, and that solves everything. Yeah. But they would be... But if they'd actually started... There was a point about 5 years ago in the quite early days when we were all working together on Football Daily, well, I remember we were talking about like the Real Madrid squad, and we were looking at them and we were like, this Real Madrid, like the squad building here was really, really good. Like they've got in so many exciting, promising young players that actually they might be set for several years if they trust them. And they haven't trusted them, and they didn't sell at the right time, and now they're stuck with guys hoovering wages like Isco when they could have moved him on. And probably one of the reasons Hakimi left in the summer as well, I imagine, is because he was the right back that they were able to get money for. So I don't know, like they definitely could have just thought about this a little bit earlier on and figured out a way to integrate these players properly. But instead, because they've got this idea of we are Real Madrid and we need to be playing the stars, and we can't roll out a team full of players who nobody's heard of with squad numbers that are like in the 40s. Then I think they've themselves.
The players that have departed, if you line up an XI or at least 5 or 7 aside, could probably give this current squad a game, and that's probably the most damning indictment of their sort of transition into a new era, quote unquote. But then, we've spoke about how they've been able to pick up players like Kovacic and Ceballos and, others and sell them on for a decent fee, maybe not at the right time. But then they're also doing the reverse of that, where they're picking up good players for big fees and not playing them, like Eder Militao. So, I mean, the 23-year-old cost 45 million from Porto, which we said at the time was pretty extravagant, but it made sense because Ramos was of a certain age and was coming towards the end of a contract, and it wasn't guaranteed he would sign another contract because PSG would offer him a small island in exchange for representing their club for 2 years. There's now like question marks over Eder Militao's future. He's been linked with Liverpool owing to their centre-back situation, and if you can get him on loan for 6 months as Liverpool, that would be dreamy business to keep you ticking over, wouldn't it? And let Fabinho or Jordan Henderson go back into midfield. You don't necessarily have to play Wijnaldum or Shaqiri, every other game. And I quite like him, he's a he's only 23, high volume passer, had a couple good seasons prior to this. Has shown a good variety of distribution, admittedly not at Real Madrid, where he's been a bit more conservative when he's played, which is understandable because he's been trying to prove himself right. And at the minute, like people say, like Varane and Ramos, how do you get into that centre-back pairing? But statistically, Real Madrid have the 6th best defence in the league. It's not like they're watertight at the moment. And they're behind some pretty, I say middling side, that'd be doing them a disrespect, but middling sides in terms of budget and stature in comparison to Real Madrid. So I think perhaps he should have more opportunity. But I mean, if Liverpool can get him, they should get him. I'm a big fan of Militao. I don't know about you, Pat. Admittedly, I'll give him, maybe more credit than he's due because he's Brazilian. But there we go.
I think there's little to no chance he goes out on loan in January, though. I think Real Madrid would be mad to let their kind of number one backup effectively go out on loan without having a deeper centre-back option than that. It would be really weird for me. I think there's potential that he leaves in the summer, especially with David Alaba coming to the club. I'm pretty sure Marcelo's going to go out in the summer. It looks like he's going to go to Monaco, and if that happens, maybe it's a sign that he's going to play as a left-back come centre-back. I'm not really sure how Zidane's going to integrate David Alaba. That could be quite interesting because Ferland Mendy's obviously playing left-back at the moment. So does he just
as well,
get fobbed off, or does Alaba come and play alongside Sergio Ramos? It's going to be interesting to see where David Alaba plays, especially if, let's say, Pogba goes as well for like 40-50 million. Then suddenly, I think we've just got to be a bit careful that we don't hammer Madrid too hard, given that they obviously won La Liga last season. And then suddenly Pogba arrives, Alaba arrives, and Mbappe arrives, and we're like, bloody hell, like maybe the squad building wasn't as bad if they sold these players to make way for them.
That's a good summer, right? We're not criticising the players they've brought in, we're criticising the players they've let go, and I do think you can differentiate.
But would you be willing to let those players go if those three arrived? Is the point I'm kind of trying to make.
That's a huge if. Obviously, Paul Pogba already got 1 year left on his contract in the summer, and Real Madrid, they've been courting him for quite some time. Would you take, to flip the ball back in your court, would you take an Odegaard plus cash deal?
No, because Odegaard's just going to want to play where Bruno plays, and he's not going to play in there. We've got Donny as a backup in there already, so I don't think there's a massive need for him in there. But I just think that we might come back to this in literally 5 months' time when they've signed 3 huge names and be like, okay, if you actually weigh up the outs and how much they got for them, and then you look at the players they've just brought in now, even if they finish 2nd or 3rd in La Liga, we might say, okay, the squad building wasn't too bad. But it feels like it's like that kind of situation, because I know there are a few passengers in here as well.
The last
I don't
huge
think that's
signing
true,
they made
though.
was Hazard, right? Go on. Sorry, Pat. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I don't think that you can, like, if a team makes one good decision but they've also made a bad decision, like, you're perfectly within your rights to point out the bad decision and say they could be better. Like, I mean, if they go and get those players this summer, firstly, I wouldn't particularly like the Pogba deal, but I don't know, like, I would think, like, yes, okay, it's great they've gone and signed Mbappe. It's pretty good that they've gone and got Alaba, and I think he's probably got quite a few years left in him. But would they be better if they had Hakimi at the club? Yes. Would they be better if they'd found a way to move on from Modric? Yes. Like, I mean, like, the fact is that their refusal to find, like, these kind of cheap role players has actually hampered them. Like, we always think, oh, well, you know, this club, like, they've got, like, we people ask things like, how many of this team's first 11 would start for that team? And they think that that's a good way of understanding how good a side is. But, I mean, look at a club like Liverpool, where for a long time they had a completely functional midfield, you know, with, like, nobody special in it at all. And I say that, you know, I'm not doing down, like, Jordan Henderson or something, but, like, it's a pretty, like, workman-like midfield. And they're the best team in Europe. Like, I just think that this is something that Real Madrid have missed a trick on. And I think that if they came out of the summer with Pogba instead of Modric, with Alaba instead of Ramos, and with Mbappe up front, then yes, they would have improved. But if they had Hakimi, if they had, like, a better midfield, then yeah, I would think they would be better. And it isn't just for Real Madrid. It isn't just about being, like, the best club in Spain. It's obviously about being the best club in Europe. And I think pulling a rabbit out of a hat with one particular side, it's like Man United. Like, yes, they deserve credit for going and getting Bruno, and yes, they deserve credit for maximising Bruno since, but you still have to say how much better would Man United be if they'd addressed their major squad issues over the last couple of years, and they'd be so much better. Like, so that's the frustrating thing. Real Madrid is that, but on a larger scale.
Fair. All right, let's move on to a couple other names then that might be shouts for the original questionnaire, because we've gone quite Real Madrid dominant about wasted talents. We're still on the hunt for some other ones. We've said Militao potentially. We've said Odegaard. Pato, is there any other names that stand out to you across Europe that you think are kind of just wasting away at the moment?
I think Ricky Puig is someone I'd definitely be really interested in. I think if you can get Ricky Puig in January on a loan with an option, you've potentially got a real bargain there, because he could play as the most attacking player in a midfield 3. He could probably play as a 10. Like, the things that pop in his numbers so far, he's a great dribbler, he's a good creator, like a good creative passer, and he's got great pressing intensity. Okay. Those things suggest to me, like, this is a really good kind of 10 type player. So if you were a club like Arsenal and you can't get Odegaard, then Ricky Puig would be a great candidate, because if he's not great, that's fine. You know, he's back up to Smith Rowe. If he's really good, he starts for you. And if you have an option to buy, then definitely try and pick him up in the summer. And Ronald Koeman has made it abundantly clear that he wants Puig to go out on loan, which I do not understand at all. He just seems to me like a really interesting candidate, not just for an Arsenal, but, you know, if a club like Arsenal doesn't go and take a gamble, what about a side like Wolves, who are lacking that extra bit of creativity from midfield this season? You know, I think that a team like that, even a team like United, where, yes, he's not going to play as a 10 for you, but you could make the most of that defensive intensity by playing him as one of the shuttling roles in a diamond. Something like that, I think that he would have a use for a lot of different sides, and he's young. Like, it's not like you're just taking someone for 6 months just in case. It's like it's a good opportunity to assess whether this guy who has very interesting numbers might be worth buying at a later stage. So he's someone I'd certainly take a look at, and I'd rather take him, I think, than, you know, take Isco off Real Madrid's hands, take Christian Eriksen off Inter's hands. Yeah,
it's an interesting one, because I feel like Ricky Puig has got, like, domestic loan written all over him. In, like, needs.
Yeah, I thought he was at Betis.
Almost, I'd be worried about him coming to the Premier League and playing sort of like 30% of the games, maybe like taking a little bit of time to adapt to such a major move. Whereas I can see him prospering a little bit more domestically, Chris?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's similar to Odegaard at Sociedad, right? If they can get him in the sort of right profile of team, I do think Arsenal would be an interesting shout. I think Smith Rowe is the top assister at Arsenal at the minute with 3, joint with Willian, who got 2 of them on the opening day. So chance creation from open play, which is sort of Puig's forte, right, suits Arsenal down to the ground. But yeah, probably unlikely. I was thinking maybe a similar sort of profile of player, but at the other end of his career. I was thinking of Papu Gomez. It's been really odd how
where's he gonna go?
How his situation at Atalanta has unfurled. He's obviously fallen out with Gasperini. It's been quite cloak and dagger as to why. It was after that Champions League fixture. So I'm totally unsure. But if you can say to Atalanta, listen, we know you want shot of him. Why don't we take him on loan for 6 months and then take an option to buy at the end of the season? I imagine the fee would be relatively low, given that he's in his 30s, but high chance creation, very fluid, tactically fluid player, can play along the front 3. He'd perhaps have to go to a more progressive club than a Wolves, although maybe someone of that stature. Maybe as an upgrade to who is Pablo Hernandez at Leeds. That might be interesting. Get Papu Gomez teamed up with his compatriot Marcelo Bielsa at Leeds. I'm sure he could,
What about Southampton? They need a bit of creativity, in that hole.
Yeah, fit into that situation. Southampton, I think the pressing is probably a bit too hard for him. I don't think his pressures are up there. Obviously, the fullbacks and the midfield like Martin de Roon and the Swiss midfielder whose name I'm forgetting at the moment. Will I get it? No. Remo Freuler. That's it. Do quite a lot of the defensive work in that team, but yeah, it could be a fun shout. I think Southampton should probably move. I think they should move for Ryan Christie from Celtic, to be honest. I think Celtic are probably looking to cash in 10, 15 mil. He's been linked with Arsenal as well. That's why he just sort of sprang to mind. Really adept presser, physical specimen. So yeah, I think Papu Gomez to a Brighton or to a Leeds.
I think he could aim higher than that, man. Like I understand, like, if it's just a loan, I think you do want to be careful about, language and stuff like that, which is one of the reasons I thought, Puig at Arsenal, you've got Ceballos, you've got Partey, you've got Aubameyang, like, you've got Arteta who all speak Spanish, that might help. Similarly, I think, like, Papu Gomez, if Man United really want to make a run at the league, what is wrong with getting a 6 months loan for Papu Gomez, where he's going to have Amad Diallo, who he already knows, he's going to have Bruno Fernandes, who speaks Italian, he's going to have Cavani, who speaks Spanish. Like, those are the players around him who he'd need to kind of work with. I think that could be potentially quite interesting. Like, and it's fairly low risk. His wages are probably very low for a club like United. If you really want to go and like try and win the league, a couple of short-term loans might be the way to do it.
That is interesting because Edinson Cavani was seen at first as quite an uninspired signing, and then all of a sudden became, a highly valuable asset to come on from the bench. So I guess if you want to give Bruno a rest, I know that Joe, you've said you think he looks fatigued. Ollie has sort of refuted that claim, not your individual claim. That would be quite something. This week, hasn't he? He said that Bruno isn't tired, but yeah, it would be interesting to rotate.
I just think though, the number 10 role is
for a Papu.
The number 10 role is so jacked at United. Like Pogba wants.
No,
to
you
play
play him
there,
on the right.
Donny wants to play there.
You'd play him on the right, like where you don't have like a natural fit. Like
I
wouldn't play him at 10 because I think Donny kind of needs to play there if Bruno isn't. But you could definitely play him on the right.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I can't imagine us going for him, truth be told. But
no, neither can I.
I definitely think. I do wonder whether they're going to want him out on loan though, or whether they just want shot of him entirely. Because the falling out has obviously been so vicious, it feels almost like they won't be willing to do a loan. They'll just get rid of him for like pennies on the dollar. And I don't know whether he's just going to stick around in Italy and end up at like Inter Milan in about 2 weeks when Christian Eriksen leaves to go on loan to Wolves.
West Ham, mate. West Ham. I feel like he's the evolution of Lanzini. Like a Blastoise.
Isn't that just Ben Rama? Isn't that just Ben Rama?
Lanzini is evolving into Papu Gomez, mate. That's what it'd be. I think they've got every stage of that, haven't they?
I'll go for Dele Alli. I think Dele Alli is like got to get a move this month. Really has got to get a move. He's not going to go to the Euros of England, which is a bit of a shame because
What do you think of Jose's treatment of him, Joe? Like, one start in the Premier League. Like, I know he doesn't necessarily fit into the team, and then Ndombele and Lo Celso might be playing better, but he's better than one start, isn't he?
Look, I don't particularly like how Jose publicly outs his players, and we've kind of all agreed on that at some stage on Football Daily, I guess, in that, you know, when it's obviously a Jose management tactic, isn't it? That he kind of tries to rile the player out to get the best out of them. Some really react to it well. And Tanguy Ndombele has obviously reacted to it well, playing brilliantly in that 10 role recently. Dele maybe is struggling a little bit. I think it was quite telling in the Amazon documentary when almost the first 2 or 3 days of taking over the job, Jose was calling him the laziest trainer, a really lazy guy sort of thing. And that seems to have stuck in the back of my head somewhere, that Dele was never quite going to be his go-to man, even though he did have a good spell for 2 or 3 months when Jose first took over. I don't really have a massive problem with Jose leaving him out of the team, especially given Lo Celso can't get a start in that 10 role either because Tanguy is playing so well. So he's almost like third choice now. And he's not as good as Tanguy and Ndombele. That's like the simple fact at the moment. Tanguy and Ndombele is crushing it, and Dele needs to get away, needs a fresh start or at least some game time. And PSG would be ideal for him. He knows the manager there. He's going to be competing for silverware immediately. I think he would start in that PSG team as well. I know that Pablo Sarabia is still putting up pretty decent. I think he's up about 0.7 expected assists per 90 across 14 games this season with PSG, which is pretty impressive. But I do think Poch would trust Dele over Sarabia. Just nice to have a player he's worked with before come in. He would learn loads off of the likes of Mbappe, and it'd be a joy to watch Dele Alli play off of Mbappe, Neymar, and co. So I think Dele to PSG makes plenty of sense, but I just don't know whether Jose will be willing to allow him that move, if you get what I mean. I think he's not to be vindictive, but he might just want to keep him around because this is such a tight season, and if Tanguy and Ndombele picked up an injury, Dele is then the backup to Lo Celso. So I don't think he will go, but I think he desperately needs to, would be my thoughts.
PSG would have to change the system as well, though, wouldn't they? Because I think more often than not they've played a 4-3-3 this season. I don't know if that would change under Mauricio Pochettino, but they've kind of had like a Herrera, Gay, Verratti midfield, haven't they, with Sarabia, Moyes again, and Mbappe in the team. And obviously when Neymar returns, they've got that creativity from a central area, haven't they? So yeah. I don't even know if he's a shoe-in to start at PSG.
I think Pochettino, I think his first game he played a 4-2-3-1 with Angel Di Maria out right, Kylian Mbappe out left, Neymar in the hole behind Moise Kean, and then Verratti and Paredes as the DMs, if my memory serves me right. So I would potentially say... that would, or right. Mbappe up front, Neymar goes left, and Dele plays in the 10 role. And even if he doesn't start every game, surely he starts more than the one he's taken in the first 5 months of this season at Tottenham. Even if he started 10 of the 20 games remaining, or however many is left in Ligue 1, it would be an improvement, wouldn't it? And he would be probably winning a trophy at the end of the season. So I think this needs to happen for Dele's career, and I think Poch would rather go for Dele than Eriksen, because he might think in the back of his head, if I can get 3-4 good months out of Dele Alli, I might be able to do a deal with Daniel Levy come the summer to sign him. Do I want Christian Eriksen long term at PSG? Probably not, despite the fact he might have an impact. I think Dele Alli needs to go to PSG. That'd be just ideal for his career and his redevelopment, because it's just stagnated at the wrong age as well. Any other ones then? I've seen Paulo Dybala was named amongst a few of the Twitter replies to this one, Pato.
Yeah, though, isn't he injured now?
Did
they have confirmed ligament damage? Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of bored of Dybala. There are a load of homes for him, but I think he's one of those guys like Dele Alli where we all say, oh, he should go somewhere where he's going to play, but I think his parent club is completely unwilling to let him go. They're just going to say, no, we'll keep him. He backs us up at a couple of key positions. We're in an incredibly tight campaign. Absolutely no way we let this guy go.
Yeah, I agree. Should we move on to some quick fire questions then? Because I feel like we've rinsed out quite a few of the wasted names. If there's any players at your club that's being wasted, let us know in the comments below. The first quick fire question was sent in by Jam Reed. He says, name one player from the Championship your clubs should sign. Anyone that's Celtic? You got your eye on at Celtic, Hamster?
Oh, I've been beating the Mads Anderson drum for a little while at Barnsley. He keeps year on year, I mean, he's only been there for 2 seasons to be fair, putting up the most interceptions in the league, an awful lot of aerial duels won, and in my eyes, a good Christopher Ayer replacement who will probably go in the summer, despite being one of the players that Celtic should probably rebuild the squad around. I can imagine a bit of an exodus happening in the summer. I like Ethan Pinnock at Brentford. I like quite a lot of Brentford's players to be fair, but they're going to be hard to get out of Brentford now, which is a weird evolution, isn't it? Like buying a player from Brentford for 20 to 30 mil. I think that'll probably do. A centre half, maybe.
Okay, centre half. I'll go for Max Aarons at right back. I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka is desperate for some competition at the moment. I don't know whether you guys watched the Fulham game last night, but he was struggling pretty badly. He's obviously fantastic going backwards. I don't want to go into it too much because we've talked about it to death. One of the best tacklers in the league, and he just needs some support going forwards because it's a real problem area for United, that right-hand side of the pitch, without having a natural right winger, without having a right back that wants to get across the halfway line. It's very easy to shut us down. So I think Max Aarons coming into the squad, just providing a bit of competition in the same way Telles has done for Luke Shaw, might really improve Aaron Wan-Bissaka because I do think he's got it in him. He's just lacking confidence, and maybe a player behind him adding that spark gives him that. And I think Max Aarons would be a good idea in terms of the long-term vision of the club as well. Homegrown, makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously not going to happen in January because Norwich are at a full tilt title push. But yeah, I would go Max Aarons just to try and give Aaron Wan-Bissaka some competition because behind him right now is no one. I mean, Brandon Williams, I suppose, but he's kind of a left back as well, and then Tuanzebe. Aaron Wan-Bissaka knows he's going to play every game. And against some of the smaller sides, not to be disrespectful, when United are dominant on the ball, you need a right back who's going to provide a creative outlet, and at the moment Wan-Bissaka can't do that. So I would go for Max Aarons. What about you, Pat?
Not allowed to say Buendia, Pat. You're not allowed to say him.
Well, if not Buendia, then I think Michael Lelise from Reading
Nice.
would be an interesting player. Like obviously an extremely young guy who's already putting up elite creative numbers. I think he's on like 4 goals, 8 assists, something like that now.
He's
for
got
a side which is a side which is not particularly special. Good dribbler. Like I think that he's somebody who would make a lot of sense for Arsenal. You could go and like get him and give him some time to develop. Like I think in an ideal world, Arsenal should probably be targeting guys between 21 and 24. But failing that, when there's like such an exciting prospect at his age, then go ahead and like take a risk on it.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is from Matt Snell. He says, has David Moyes been the most underrated manager this season, Chris?
Underrated. I mean, you know what I'm going to say, but he's definitely...
No, don't say it. Come on, let's have a
up
Potter free week.
No, it's Potter. I enjoy David Moyes having a renaissance because I think his reputation was sullied and he became a meme, and it was unfair given the work he'd done at Everton, and people started generalising or stereotyping him as one of the old guard, and I think he's far more progressive than that. I think he's far more inclined to seek out the opinion of data analysts, for example, than people give him credit for. Admittedly, the United backroom staff situation was a show, wasn't it? Like, not a good way to start out a huge club clearing house. But he's done a couple of solid jobs prior to West Ham. I think Sunderland would be on anyone's saving. So yeah, I think it's a similar system that's kind of reliant on the physicality of like a Susek arriving as a second striker in the box. But I think he's getting really good numbers from from people like Fornals. He's working his arse off up front. I think he should probably get a little bit more credit. Jared Bowen, I think, is maybe going a little bit under the radar as well. A little bit lazy in terms of his defensive numbers and his pressures, but when he gets on the ball or when he's looking to receive the ball, very, very useful forward. So yeah, there's probably a couple more strings to their bow than I expected under David Moyes, and I really like him. What about you, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, like, David Moyes, I think, has done a great job this season. Like, I don't really know if there's much to add there. Like, I think they've been one of the better sides in the league. They're going to finish in the top half. Like, they've taken a real step forward, and yes, they've added some talent, but they've also really shored up at the back, despite I'd say some severe lack of talent in certain positions. Really impressed by Soufal as well. So yeah, I don't know. I think David Moyes, I'm kind of glad that he's rehabilitated his reputation as like a sensible, like, good organising manager. Because I think that a lot of these guys have kind of become underrated. Because a few of them are a little bit overrated, you know.
Do you think there's been some?
Yeah, I think
there's been some brave tactical decisions made as well. Like, who would have had Aaron Cresswell down as a left centre half before this season, and obviously doubling down on the talent from, was it Sparta Prague, who didn't have a great season last season. I think they finished third in the Czech league, and you know, he's still taken two players from there who have performed extremely well. I think Soufal's a great shout. I think he's responsible for the second most balls in the box. So obviously they are still, you know, crossing from wide areas, but why not? It's working.
I also think as well, just to come back to it, like, nobody would have seen the dropping of Issa Diop in favour of Craig Dawson at the start of the season and thought, that's a good tactical move. But it's worked out perfectly for David Moyes having that back line. And I also, the one thing I'm not sure about is I don't understand the sale of Seb Aller mid-season. I find that a really weird move, given I think he's their top scorer in all competitions, maybe alongside Mikel Antonio. Obviously, Antonio's been out injured, but without having a named backup for Antonio right now, let's say Antonio gets injured next week, who fills that David Moyes' prominent physicality role up front that Antonio and Haller were trying to fill? I think that's a really bizarre decision without having a man lined up, but it might not be any fault of David Moyes. It might be a decision that's been made above him, which I guess it probably is. Let's do another one though. Frankie190303 says, if Lampard is sacked, would you take him at Celtic, Chris?
No.
Straight up. So who do you want then now? Lennon's gone, yeah? Well, he's out the door surely. Kick him out. He's got to go.
Yeah, I've said a few times, like, Eddie Howe is a preference, and there's like young progressive managers like Diego Martinez at Granada, or De Zerbi at Sassuolo. I mean, his stock is probably too high now. He's already being touted for the Juventus job with Pirlo struggling. Julian Stephans at Rennes. Like, I don't think there's, and you two, you know, you might agree or disagree, there's probably been a better time to go and snare a top level manager than right now. Pat, we had a really good conversation on the podcast about how many good managers are available right now. Like, say Lampard is out of a job next week, and, you know, we hope he's not, because you know, you wouldn't want to wish that upon anyone, but would he get another chance at a top level club right away, given how many people are out there right now jobless, like Allegri and co?
Not a top level club, but I think he'd probably get another shot in the Championship or in the mid to lower Premier League. Like, I think there would be jobs out there for him. Like, it's one of those things where I think with someone like Brendan Rodgers, there was almost a unique confluence of events that allowed Celtic to get him. He'd obviously been fired. I think he wanted some time out of the spotlight because he'd been pretty hard done by. He loves Celtic as a club. Like, I think those things, you know, were quite major factors. I actually think Lampard would be quite interesting at Celtic. I'd be quite intrigued to see how that went, but I think he'd go back to the Championship or something and be totally fine. I think it's a really tough ask for Celtic to poach somebody from a top 5 league, even if they're at one of the lower clubs. Like, Julian Stephane has taken Rennes to Champions League football. I'm not sure he's going to leave for Celtic unless Celtic can offer him a lot more money, and I doubt that that's realistic, given Rennes' kind of money-making academy, really.
Yeah.
Great use of the word confluence as well. I think one thing Celtic have been prepared to do in recent years is offer pretty significant wages. Brendan Rodgers, as much as he said he was at the club because he loved it, was on a staggering amount of cash, and our current wage bill for players, for example, is 60 million, which is twice as much as De Zerbi's players are on at Sassuolo, for example. So, and with the players going out, I do think again that unique set of circumstances might present itself this season. There's pressure on our majority shareholder, who's a billionaire, to go and get a manager with real pedigree, and there's going to be an adequate transfer budget compared to previous summers. So I think you could strike while the iron is hot, but I agree it'd be difficult, but definitely worth pursuing rather than employing another club legend. I've got a horrible feeling it's going to be someone like Paul Lambert, but there we go.
Ooh,
which is crazy because when you look at managers available, language might be an issue, and maybe he's holding out for something better, but I do think there are guys out there in the market like Valverde. I would 100% take a stab at. Why not? The worst he can say is no. I think you should absolutely go to some of those people. Go and ask Maurizio Sarri how he feels about going to Celtic. They would love him in Scotland. So I don't know. I feel like people always we had this attitude where we were like, oh well, Ancelotti's never going to go to Everton. If Ancelotti will go to Everton, I see absolutely no reason why Celtic can at least take a swing at somebody super ambitious. I don't know, Eusebio Di Francesco or somebody a bit off the beaten track like that. And I think that would be really, really fun and potentially great. Who knows?
Yeah, because Rangers can't keep this form up forever. They're on almost a freakish streak now, isn't it? It's
it doesn't matter. They don't have to, mate. We've just drawn 3 games in a row.
I know, but whoever comes in to manage Celtic, Rangers are going to drop back down to a level. You can't score 60 and concede 7 every single year.
Yeah, exactly.
It's having a goal difference of 53 at this stage of the season is absolutely ridiculous. It's got to level out at some stage.
This might sound bitter, but Rangers aren't as good as their numbers reflect. Just like last season, I will caveat with this. Just like last season, I don't think Celtic were as good as their numbers reflected. Rangers should have won the League Cup final. They deserve to. But this season, in the 2 Old Firm games that have happened, one at Celtic Park, one at Ibrox, so fair representation there. Celtic were awful at home, but Rangers weren't, great. Didn't need to be great to win. Alarming, but let me just double down on the fact they weren't great. And then at Ibrox, Celtic were the better side. Rangers didn't have a shot on target and still managed to win the game, which pretty much sums up Neil Lennon's luck at the moment, although it's not all been down to luck. There have been some catastrophic individual decisions. So this is not a Brendan Rodgers Celtic side, this Rangers side. It's not as dominant as it appears. But Gerrard has done a good rebuild nonetheless. But they've spent a fair amount of money. But that's not sour grapes from me. They deserve the league title this season.
And if you want to hear Chris talk more about who can come in at Celtic, go and listen to the podcast, because I think Leo Jardim got a little shout as well in amongst some of those names. Right, let's do one final personal one, and this one from Ritab Pandi. He says, Asian country you want to visit? ? Chris?
I feel like I also included another personal question as well. I'm going to buy myself some time here from Mishras Han. There was, what are your favourite workout songs? I think that exclusively applies to Pat, because I feel like he's the only one that really works out of the 3 of us.
Yeah, that's so
I want to know your tunes, mate.
It kind of depends on the workout. I think when I'm running, there's nothing that this because you're a runner as well. When the right song hits at the right moment when you're running and you're I'm going to run so fast that I'm gonna in a cartoon where someone burns a furrow in the ground, that's what I'm gonna do. So the other day I was running through Richmond Park and Pure Shores came on, and I was
what a track.
And I was now this is amazing. Am I still running or am I flying? So that was pretty good. But if you're having a big weights workout, then I prefer something a bit kind of heavier. I prefer something God, I don't know, Death Grips or something, or the other day, B.O.B. by Outkast came on, or Nick Clon by Nekfeu, which is a French rap song, and they're just a really hard rap song where I'm just yes, or punk or something that will really get you going for a weights workout, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't really work out enough to comment on that one. So, Asian country, Chris?
Yeah. You'd have thought that'd give me enough time to pick one. But, like, I think it's probably the most, like, unthought about, like, continent, right, in terms of visiting it. But there's just, like, a bunch of interesting places I want to go, like Nepal, Cambodia.
Just to change the subject, has any of you watched The Serpent?
Yeah, I started
watching
last
it right
night.
now.
Started last night.
Oh, mate, it's so good. Don't give me any spoilers. I'm only 5 episodes in, but it is...
Yeah, me too. I'm waiting for it to get good.
It's so intriguing. Like, I have tried desperately not to look at any spoilers as to who, like, whether he gets arrested, whether he, like, dies or whatever. So don't tell me, but
it is
I'm
good.
just desperate to know what happened.
But the first episode, it was a lot of like stylistic shots without much happening. But I hope it picks up.
I've got to say, Chris, like, you're in for like 4 episodes of total boredom before it starts to pick up.
Right.
Like, I think it started really slowly, and I think Tahar Rahim is horribly miscast in it. Horribly miscast. Like, I don't know.
I'm not
just
the
like
biggest fan of him either. I totally agree with that.
He needs to be more charismatic, right? You're like, there are all these people who just seem to be like pulled into his orbit and be fine with the fact that this guy is just like murdering people left and right. And like, he needs to be more charismatic than this, and he's just kind of boring. It's really weird.
He needs to be the hub of every party. Like, every scene is based around a party. Yes. Like, everybody should be crowded around him and like living up vicariously through him. He's just like silent, sat in a corner. Like, watching it all go on.
Yeah, so the part either needs to be written in a more interesting way, or the actor has to bring like that extra level of charisma, right? And it just feels like it isn't quite there. But like, it does get more interesting as time goes on. It definitely does.
Who would you have cast?
I don't know, man. I'd have probably cast an Asian actor. Like, I probably wouldn't have cast Tahar Rahim. Like, I don't know, really. Like, I think that there are probably like tons of good actors out there that you could have found for the part. Like, I think Tahar Rahim's a really weird choice for it, even though I think he's an interesting actor.
About Riz Ahmed, I'm just a huge fan of him. I'd just cast him in everything, to be perfectly honest.
I don't know. I mean, like, he equally doesn't really look like the guy himself, but like,
he could bulk out though.
I'll tell you who
no,
is
they
good,
just
though.
don't. They just
I
don't.
think Jenna
like
Coleman's good in it.
Yeah.
Good. Her accent. I feel like maybe it's because I don't know a lot about French, but I feel like she's nailed that French down.
She's got the French vibe.
Pretty well.
She's doing French Canadian, right? And the French always laugh at French Canadians for sounding like country bumpkins. So like, it kind of works either way.
Yeah, and just by the way, the reason I brought that up, not randomly, is because it's based around like Asia and Nepal and areas like that that Chris was mentioning.
Which is an interesting it's interesting the BBC produced something like that happened that far afield, and it's not just some Victorian, whatever. I mean, Japan's definitely up there. Like, obviously, especially after Pat came back and sort of sung its praises. I just think it's a fascinating continent. I was supposed to go to Hong Kong because my friend was supposed to be moving out there, but he's finding it very hard to get a visa now. I'm guessing the political climate and COVID have just, created the perfect storm in terms of not getting out there. But yeah, it's an interesting continent, but one maybe find a little bit scarier than others. Maybe it doesn't help watching The Serpent, but it just feels a little bit alien, more alien than obviously than South America for some reason. But no, very keen to explore it nonetheless.
All right then, there we go. That's it for another episode of Sunday Vibes. If you've got any questions, stick them in the comments below or send them to us on Twitter for next week. Podcast this week, Pato, was on managers, wasn't it?
Yeah, talking about the managers who are available in Europe and where they might want to go. We talked about Max Allegri, who's been out of work for nearly 2 years now. Thomas Tuchel, who obviously is just out of work. And then some of the other candidates who you might have forgotten about. So obviously Lucien Favre. Who else did we talk about? Leonardo Jardim. We didn't really talk about Valverde in the end, but we obviously had a little chat about Arsenal and Celtic's troubles as well and who they could turn to if there was an issue.
Yeah. All right, there we go. That's it for another episode of Sunday Vibes. Thanks very much for watching. See you later. Bye.